If you see me bobbing my head, you might even hear it actually. There's a little bit of like the Beatles bossa nova happening behind me from this band that's playing. So if you hear a little Beatles bossa nova or some salsa in the background, that's what's going on. If you kind of hear me or see me kind of bobbing my head, I'm doing my little chair dance. Now that we're live, as always, please let me know how my internet is working. I'm just going to spend a moment or two just inviting some people to join me, and then let you know who I am and what's going on for today, and we will get started. So today is day 3 of the 3-part series that I like to call the Faces of Fear. And it might be, if you haven't watched the last 2 days, it's up. The link actually was a little bit on it today, and I posted the link actually in the description. So if you're curious about days 1 and days 2, just follow the link to the event, and the replay is available there. It's not going to be available forever, so if you're curious, get on it. Yeah. Just finish. All right, I'm done inviting some peeps, and let's get started. So I'm Jen Plotnikoff. Moved from Within is my little work that I do. It's not so little, it's actually pretty big. And I work with courage. I work with how do we work with fear in a way that actually helps us get unstuck, in a way that helps us actually move through to a better body, space, health, life. And I work with the body. But it's not just all about the body. The body is just a wonderful tool for us to get out of our head, to get out of overthinking things. And I'm going to talk a little bit about today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about bringing some of our subconscious things that are going on, some of our subconscious little fears that kind of run in the background and cause us to take action totally subconsciously, and how we can start to become more aware of those things without getting too much of the intellect involved. Not that the intellect is a bad thing, but sometimes what can happen is when we bring awareness to some of these different practices, some of these different habits that we have and ways of being, we automatically start to beat ourselves up for it and get really judgmental, which is not healthy or helpful. So how do we do this? So now that you know who I am, I'm just going to give you a little bit. I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, if you are watching either me live or in the replay, please say hello in the comments. Please, hey Juniper, hope you're doing well. Hope it's not too wet out there for you. Please let me know that you're here, say hello, and also let me know how my internet connection is. Now, some of you may or may not know, but I'm in Mexico right now, and it's kind of windy today, and sometimes when the wind blows, the internet sucks. So let me know if I'm cutting out. Let me know if you're hearing me okay. And let me know if you have any questions or comments at any point. I do come back to the questions and comments on the replay too. So if you happen to come across this after it's posted and it's no longer live, feel free to ask, because I will answer. And also, I will be offering some little practices and homework for you for each part of the series. So this is part 3. Parts 1 and 2 have their own little homework pieces that are really quick and really powerful. So if you haven't watched those, go back to watch those too. You don't necessarily have to do them in order, but it does kind of make sense because I do kind of progress through things. So you can do the practices at any time, like you don't have to do those in order. But if there's something you're a little bit confused about, watch the other videos and that might help clarify things. And if you've watched them all and you're still confused, ask me a question. I just have something weird on there we go. It's gone. Had something weird on my screen and it was driving me crazy. All right. So today I want to talk about bringing some of these habits that we have into consciousness and how they show up. And as I kind of mentioned in part one, I talked in part 1 and 2 a little bit about distinguishing, what we're talking about when I talk about fear. So we're not talking about like the big, like jumping out of an airplane kind of fear that we all have, but we're talking about the little habits that we have. They could be cultural fears, they could be familial stuff that we came up. And in part 1, we kind of explored what are some of those beliefs that we have, like what are some of the things that we say over and over and over to ourselves. So bringing a little bit of consciousness and awareness around that. And then yesterday I shared with you a little story about how those little fears can actually impact not just our health, but actually when we start to work with them and free that stuff up, it actually frees up a lot of energy in our whole life. So how little things can actually, these little practices that are actually more somatic rather than intellectual can actually unlock energy, health. Our whole life can really shift with some really, really small, powerful practices. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about another practice that we can do to really bring some of these little subconscious. Yesterday I talked a little bit about how we don't necessarily even have to bring some of these habits into consciousness, because sometimes what happens is we have this tendency to want to overanalyze things and over-intellectualize things and beat ourselves up and judge ourselves for it, which is completely unnecessary. So I talked about that a little bit yesterday in some of the practices. So what I want to talk about today is how we can actually bring this stuff into consciousness in a way that isn't necessarily going to make us go into the judgment place. So first of all, we have to be conscious that we judge ourselves. So this is really, really, really important, because when we start to hear that tone of voice that might sound like the authority, or it's the tone you're listening for. So if the tone is like filled with love and support and kind of the gushy, mushy, lovey feelings, that's probably more of your higher self talking. But 99% of the time, the tone that's coming to us, rather, even if it's like good advice that we're giving ourselves, the tone kind of comes from this place of, you should do this, or you should do that, or why didn't I do this? And you really know you should eat this or not that, or whatever it is. Listen and pay attention to the tone. So in some of the exercises that I gave you over the last couple of days, we were looking at this, like what's the quality of the way that we talk to ourselves, right? So today what I want to do is I'm going to give you a couple things to work on. We're going to actually work backwards. So the last couple of days we talked a little bit about how these kind of fears run things and how there's sort of a bit of a process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this process. And if you see me again looking down, I have notes because I come prepared. I forget things, so I have to write them down. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking down to see if I'm getting everything I wanted to transmit here that I wrote down. So the process that I'm talking about is often we have the fear comes up. So we might have this pre-program, whatever it is, it comes from our family, society, whatever. It really doesn't matter at this point, because what does matter is the action that we take. So often what happens is this program's running, we butt up against something that makes us uncomfortable, or we feel discomfort. We get, we could say we get triggered, but we don't always like feel triggered as in like, oh, I feel angry or upset. Sometimes our whole nervous system is just like, wow, this is uncomfortable. And so it's automatically going to go into whatever automatic habit that we've developed as a protection mechanism. So today what I wanted to look at is what are some of those protection mechanisms? What do they look like? So that we can start to recognize when these underlying patterns are like running their course, and we can actually work backwards to look at what the discomfort actually is. So a really simple example of this is sometimes we say yes to doing things that we really don't want to do. Hi, Vicky. So, example is maybe there's like a social engagement that you want to say yes to because you feel obliged, but you don't really want to go. And so what do you say? You make up an excuse, right? And most of us don't even think about it. We're like, I'm really busy, or, oh, I think I've got something in that time, or let me get back to you. Or sometimes, actually, this is really interesting because I had a session with this one woman a little while ago, and her tendency, her reaction was like, she would get really uncomfortable and just automatically say yes. Like before she could even think about it, she would always say yes. And then afterwards, she would have this like really awful feeling of like regret. Like, why the hell did I say that? I really don't want these people at my house. Or she would have the repercussion of like, you know, now I have to tell my husband and I feel really guilty. And he's like, why did you say yes? And you're like, I don't know. So if this is you, if this sounds familiar, first of all, you're not the only one, because clearly this woman shares the same experience, and she's actually not the only one too. We all have an experience of some kind of automatic triggering discomfort. We have an automatic response that we do. And then afterwards, we're like, because the automatic response is tied to one of these underlying little fears. So it's tied to these little inner habits that we've developed, probably since we were little or even before that, because this could be a soul pattern you're carrying from a past life. But these habits that we carry, you know, they've worked for us for so long that we keep doing them until the point when we start to realize like, hey, this isn't working. And so sometimes we realize that because, you know, we have a husband or a wife or a partner, a best friend that's like, hey, like, why did you do that? And kind of like mirrors to us our actions and how our actions actually aren't reflecting what we really want. And so what I wanted to invite you to do today is we're going to do a little bit of an activity and exercise, a little bit of homework that you're going to take away from this session that's kind of similar to the homework from day one, except for slightly different. So day one, we kind of looked at how we were looking at ourselves and some of the different belief systems that we had around ourselves. So we were looking kind of about our personality and about our ego. And right now, what I wanted to do was kind of invite us to look at some of the actions that we have and that we take that are automatic. So I'm going to share with you a couple other examples of these different actions and how we can kind of work our way backwards to kind of find out what's actually happening. So a few days ago, actually, I did a video on procrastination, and I mentioned that procrastination can actually be one of these ways that we kind of avoid. So I'll give you an example, and this is something that I often see with people that I work with, and it's something that's really common in the healing process. And I want you to pay really close attention, because if you have been working, doing self-work or in your own healing process, this will come up for you because it pretty much comes up for everybody. There is a point where you will progress and progress in your healing process, and then you might get to a spot where things start to get deeper, and it's like a threshold. It's like you get to this point where things are going to dive deep, and your system, what it does is it's freaked out. It doesn't want to change some of these things that are deep down in there that have been protecting us for a really long time. And so what happens is we start to sabotage ourselves. And the way that this can show up is all of a sudden we run out of time, money, resources, whatever they are, to continue the work that we're doing. And why this is really interesting and important is, look at this as, so for example, let's look at time, money, all this stuff is like, it's all the same. It's really just, it's a block that we put up, and we have different blocks we put up. You know, it might not show up exactly the same for everybody, but it comes from the same roots. And the roots are these little fears, but the little fears run deep. Okay, like really deep. And you have to remember, of course, these little fears come from survival mechanisms. So we're not about overriding this stuff. We can't override. I think this is one of the challenges that a lot of people have with self-work, you know, which is why a lot of the ideas that we have around manifestation, the ideas that we have around positive belief systems, mantras, that kind of stuff, that's one of the reasons why it's not effective, because you're basically just putting window dressing on top of the problem, right? And if you're not resonant with what's going on, if you're not dealing with the roots and actually integrating this stuff, hey, Tessa, if you're actually not coming into the deeper stuff and addressing that and digesting it, you can't move forward. Like, you can't. Like, this is survival we're talking about, right? This is like, I'm here and I want to stay here. This is like your instincts that you're going against who want to live and be here on the planet. So it's really important that when we look at habits, when we look at all these different activities, that there's a bridge between the change of behavior. Because the thing is that if we're just like, I talked a little bit about this in my behavior video a couple weeks ago as well, maybe it was about a week ago, how often, we want to change, I want to eat healthy, I want to do this, I want to do that. But what happens is when we start to do these things, we come up against the deeper blocks that come from these little ingrained fears. And we can't push forward because our motivators are too superficial. We've got these deeper motivators of fear that are actually much truer motivators, right? Like survival is always going to win, always. And so if we don't have safety systems in place that are healthy, that are different from those automatic survival systems, we are never going to be able to get where we want to go. And so back to this, when I was talking about where we kind of get to these places in our healing process, is we will start to run up against stuff and it will look like this. All of a sudden you get really busy and you feel overwhelmed and you don't have time. Right? So I've had this with one client who we're progressing along, and then it was interesting. We got to a point and I noticed she started to make excuses about time. And this is someone who never made excuses about time before. And I thought to myself, interesting, because we were also right at the point where we were really starting to dive into kind of like the heart of the matter, some of those deeper roots for her. And so naturally, her system was kind of like, I'm not so sure I want to dig this stuff up, because it's the safety mechanisms. When we're working with the sense of safety, this is the threshold that I talk about. This is the place that we need to build a good foundation of self-love and self-care and courage so that it gives us the strength and the structure to be able to move through this stuff. It's also the reason why working with the body is so important, and the intellect can actually run interference a little bit, because the intellect is really important, but it's not running at the survival level. It's a different part of our evolution, right? The survival mechanisms are much older and deeper, and they're very intelligent. And so this is one of the reasons why I work a lot with embodiment, because we're working directly with those connections, those deeper connections. And we don't have to go through re-traumatizing ourselves. We don't have to go through that whole guilt trip around, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. We can actually recognize some of these patterns that are coming up when they come to consciousness for what they actually are, which are survival intelligent patterns, right? When we start to look at it from its intelligence, we can start to reshape our patterning. We can actually start to rewire things. But it's kind of like when if you play sports or if you do anything active with your body, when you do something in a certain way and you learn, let's say I climb, so let's say you learn these different types of movements that are important for climbing. It means my muscles are strong in one way. But if I want to start surfing, I'm going to have to rewire my musculature to get that ingrained, right? So it's kind of like, if I want to be good at all of these different things, I have to build my muscle memory up for all of these different things. I can't just expect to do this new thing on top of the old thing and then the new thing to become the easiest thing to do. It's going to take a little bit of wiring to get there. So hopefully this makes sense. Anyway, what I'm going to do is give you another quick little example of what I mean by these habits and working our way backwards. And then I'm going to give you a little exercise. And again, like with all of the exercises, they're really simple. Don't overthink them. Don't overthink them. Just do it and see what happens, and practice it over and over. Like, do them a few times and see what happens. A lot of this is just becoming more aware of how we are in the world. When we're more aware of how we are, not just with our personality, our habits, our different ways, our systems, we start to learn our patterns, and then we have choices, right? Right now, we're running from a place of automatic. What we can do is, if 50% of the time we're aware of automatic, 50% of the time we have the option to choose something different. And that means 50% of the time we start to rewire different habits and patterns. And then we don't just have one route. We start to like branch out the roadmap a little bit, and we start to develop more choice. Hopefully that makes sense. So my other example is around procrastination. So I'm going to use a personal example. Procrastination is something that I do a lot. And it's something that maybe you guys might do as well. It's something that a lot of people do. Procrastination doesn't always show up for people the same way. For me, you know, it might show up and there's something that I really need to do that's really important. But I know I'm avoiding it when I start to make excuses like, you know, I don't think I have all the information. I need to talk to these people first. I put roadblocks up to prevent me from doing the thing that I know I have to do. Yeah, there's one thing actually that I've been meaning to write an email to a few people for like a few weeks now. And I know that it's because I have this fear of, even though obviously you see that I'm putting myself out there, I have this fear of putting myself out there, and this fear that I'm going to get rejected. And so even though I know that it's really important that I put this email out there, that I've been avoiding it. I've been like, oh, I was sick that week, or oh, this happened, or oh, this happened. And I know myself enough to know that it's actually not these different actions and excuses that I'm putting in front of me. It's actually the fact that I have some underlying fears around rejection. What happens if somebody doesn't get back to me, or what happens if, you know, they find out that I didn't do my research or whatever, right? In the way that they thought, you know, what if I'm received in the wrong way, right? So just these different fears and anxieties that I have, that a lot of us have, around being judged, around how we're perceived, around our self-confidence, and wanting other people to like us and accept us, right? So these are little things that we have culturally, societally, that we express in different ways. So this is an example. So for me, really the thing is that I know I just have to do it. I just have to sit down. I have to put down a time and date and just be like, okay, enough's enough. This is the date. This is the time. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to turn off my phone. I'm going to turn off all my notifications. I'm going to block off that time on my calendar, and I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to worry about, you know, whether it's perfect, whether it's right, all this stuff. I'm just going to get it done. The thing is that I know when I keep myself from getting to wherever it is, if I keep in procrastination mode, it keeps me stuck and it doesn't get me to where I want to go. So for example, you know, with my life here, with all of the things that I have created in my life, if I have stuck to my procrastination, I never would have done pretty much most of the things that I've done, right? I did a little post a little while ago about how, you know, how this sometimes shows up for people, because I hear it all the time. For example, I've always wanted to learn to surf, but I'm too old, you know, and this is someone who was like in their late 30s. I'm like, dude, I learned to surf when I was 30. And I know someone who learned to surf in their 60s, and another woman who learned to surf in her late 50s. I actually heard this from a guy who is in his 20s. He's like, oh yeah, I'm not sure. He thought he was too old to learn to surf. I was like, oh my God, and you're in your 20s. I started when I was 30. It's crazy, but these are things that we tell ourselves, and these are how our actions show up, right? So our actions are, we don't do the thing that we want to do, And then this is the lie that we tell us, this is the fear that we tell us talking, that, oh, it's not the right time, or, oh, I'm too late to do this, or, you know, I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I'm not fit enough, or I'm too muscular, or whatever it is, it's all bullshit, right? And we know it. Deep down inside, here's the thing, we know it, right? I know there's a reason why I'm not sending my emails. I know there's a reason that these videos took so long to do for me, because I knew that I had to show up and just do the Facebook Live. But it was really hard for me. And it's, of course, it's gotten easier and easier, because the more you practice something, you start to ingrain a different behavior, and that behavior becomes normal. And when we normalize the behaviors we want, when we look backwards, then it's easier to choose those behaviors. So, okay. Before I give you guys your little exercise for the day, and again, if you haven't checked out the other videos, the replays are in the event for this series, which is called Faces of Fear. So you can find the event. You can find the link actually just right here in the video. But if you're curious of perusing the Move from Within page, there's some videos up there as well. And the event is there. There's other future events, of course, that will be there. So if you want to check that out, you can check that out. And the link is right there. The other thing I wanted to just talk about as kind of a disclaimer is, of course, these trainings that I like to offer you, and I'm trying to do them on a monthly basis. So there's one I did in October, so if you're curious and you want to check out more stuff, I did a 3-part series on fear, and there's some exercises and included in that as well, and you can find that on the Moved From Within page. So my disclaimer really is, what I'm giving you right now are some pieces to work with. And these are really powerful practices. And if you do them regularly and consistently, you will notice change in your life. However, there is a reason why I do programs and I work with people one-on-one. And that reason is because in these transmissions, I can give you pieces of the puzzle. But the way that these things show up for us is different for every person, right? So there are themes and there are common strengths that connect us all collectively. And that's one of the things that I try to talk about in these series, so that we can glean something from the collective energy. But what is hitting home for you might be a little different, and it might be hitting in a different way than it is for somebody else. And so the reason why I work with people individually, I always, no matter what I do, even if I do one-on-one work, one-on-one programs, or even with group work, I always include one-on-one work, because not only do we need to do our own work in these different practices, that's part of our own personal responsibility, but I also know that we can't do this on our own. It's impossible, because the thing is that we're in our own head, right? We need the mirrors. I just realized I'm not even plugged in. Can you guys hear the music? That's so funny. I had my headphones in and I totally didn't even plug them in. But anyway, you guys have been listening to me. I just haven't really been listening to you. Funny little moment. Anyway, what I was saying is I wanted to talk about the importance of guidance through these thresholds of experience. Because although we can take these different practices, we can read books, we can, do different practices, we can consult with people, but really, if you want to dive deeper into this, there's a reason why I offer one-on-one work. So my invitation to you is that if this is something you want to go deeper into, if you're at the place where you are ready and you've had enough, then private message me, or I actually put a link to check out my website, which will lead you to my calendar. So you can directly just put yourself on my calendar. And what that does is the very first thing we do is we just talk one-on-one, either through Zoom or on a phone call or in person if you're here. And we have a quick little chat. And what I do is find out whether or not I can really work with you, where you're at, what you need. And if I can help you with the one-on-one work, then we're going to go there. But if not, I will definitely provide you some resources that will help you for wherever you are right now. So I do have a lot of different resources as well as the one-on-one work that I do. So I wanted to invite you guys to listen in to what's going on in life right now. So if you are attracted to me, if you're attracted to these kinds of videos, check in with what's going on in life for you and whether you are ready to kind of go to that next step in your life, in your health, right? So these practices that I teach, these practices and programs that I lead people through really are life-changing. And that in itself requires a lot of courage to step into. So just by being here and showing up, it shows a lot of courage and it shows a lot of strength. But in order to pass through the threshold, it's very challenging to do that without some kind of support. And I know because I've been there and I have sought support to be able to come through. Because the thing about is when we are up against some of these different challenges and thresholds, often the world around us is confirming our fears. It's not telling us that there's like a light at the end of the tunnel. We know, like if you are here, you know that it doesn't have to look like what it looks like. You know in your heart of hearts that you can get to the top of the mountain. So yesterday I talked a little bit about climbing and about how often these different transition points, we kind of feel like we're at the bottom of the mountain. We're looking up at the peak. We know that we need to get there and we know we have the capacity to get there, but we don't necessarily maybe know how to climb, right? And so this is where we need some experience. We need a guide to help us get there. And when we do get there, it's going to look completely different, often better than we even really expect. So that's a little bit what I talked about when I shared my story yesterday about some of these different little small changes and practices and how they really transformed everything about how I experienced the world. And how that was a very, 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 very powerful lesson for me. But what I wanted to invite you is, the thing is that most of the world is also looking at the top of the mountain and saying it's not possible. Because they're in such belief that it's not possible that they're never going to even try. And often these are the people that we surround ourselves with. We're not just intentionally, but unintentionally. Because most of the world, let's face it, gets to the place where they're allowed to dream when they're children. And then when we get to be adults, we're told that that's not okay anymore and we just have to let that shit go. But that's not how I work. Because I know from my own experiences that it doesn't end there. That's just the beginning. That's the initiation of jumping through your first threshold experience. When you jump through the first one, then you know it's possible. Then you know you can go to the next one and the next layer and the next layer, because there are more layers. It's not just one, which is why we might see like a little glimmer and we're like, oh yeah, we're done. But you're not done. There's more. Wait, there's more, right? There is, when you get to that peak, it's like, oh, there's this level of growth. There's this level of expansion. And it's possible, but the thing is that we need to surround ourselves with the people that know that and can help guide us through that, and can also be that voice of support when we need it, because we will need it. We do need it. We have the rest of the world. We have the cultural beliefs. We have those little fears, not just within ourselves, but they're resonant. They're all around us. From the people who are saying, the 20-year-olds who are telling me, oh, I can't do this because I'm too old. I'm 20, right? This is the mentality of a lot of the people in our world right now. However, that's not necessarily fixed. And what I'm inviting you is if you in your heart of hearts believe something different is possible for yourself, first of all, it is. And second of all, if you're ready to prove to yourself that that's true, then send me a message because I can help you with that. That's something that I do over and over and over again. And to have the courage to step through that threshold, I don't think it's for everyone, which is why I'm saying, if you're attracted to me, if you're attracted to this, there's a resonance here. Then that's why I'm inviting you to step forward and through with me, because I've done it. I'm never going to ask you to do something that I know is not possible, that I know I haven't done myself over and over and over again. Right? So perhaps you've gleaned a little bit of motivation and hope from this, which is beautiful. But if you actually want to glean some action that's different than what you're experiencing right now, and you're ready to dig in, then send a message. We can do this. All right. Now to your homework. So, again, I said this is really similar to the exercise that I shared with you guys in day one. So in day one, we looked a little bit about our ego self, and we did some questioning around that. So what I'm inviting you to do today, so today's homework is actually looking at your actions, your automatic fear response actions. So noticing procrastination, noticing if you have a certain habit around saying yes automatically, saying no automatically. And what we're trying to get to is sort of these themes and patterns, okay? So in your week, over the next couple of days, start to notice what your actions are. So when you interact with somebody, if you're interacting with a partner or a friend, or interacting with some stranger, or you're at work and you're interacting with the public, start to notice the types of words you're using. What kinds of response do you give people? And what kinds of actions are you kind of habitually taking? What you're going to do is start to write some of those things down over the next couple of days. And what I'd like you to do is especially look at a couple little habits that are constant themes. One, as I mentioned, is procrastination. So where do you use time as an excuse to either avoid doing something? Usually it's avoidance. So we can use time in two ways. We can use it, we can kind of like put things aside. Really common habit that some people have, and note if this is you or if it feels resonant for you, is we fill up our schedule. We get so super busy and so super loaded with, saturated with so many different things and so many different activities and stuff like that, that we don't have time for ourselves. So this is you. So there's a couple different spectrums, right? So then there's the procrastinate. We'll put that off. We'll do something else. Maybe you're diverting to go have fun or go do this or go do that. Or you're filling up your schedule so much that you're too busy for everything. This is a very common one for people in our culture today. So notice, do either of these things resonate for you? Or are there other things that you notice that you tend to do? So for example, say yes automatically and then feel regretful after. So notice if you have a specific reaction, response, or habit, that's an action piece that feels a little bit incongruent or makes you kind of say, why did I do that? Or why can't I just do this? So again, do you have a bad habit, or do you have a good habit that you're trying to shift into that you can't seem to kind of shift into? So look what your habits are. Not what you want to do, but look at what you're currently doing right now. Start to bring some consciousness to currently what's going on. So again, a lot of these habits come from, we have like little underlying fear, we feel uncomfortable, then we have this automatic response. So what we're doing right now is forget about the fear. It's probably unconscious. Maybe you're aware, maybe you're not. But we're going to start to shed some light, like a big giant light bulb, into our automatic actions, whatever they are. So write down, oh, I notice I do this a lot. It's not, again, this is not about analysis. Don't over intellectualize. Just write it down. Oh, I noticed I said, this phrase over and over and over again today. Or I gave this excuse about time to somebody. Oh, I was too busy. I'm too busy. I'm too busy. Oh, I said that like 10 times today and it's like only 10 o'clock in the morning. Write that down. That's a habit. And what I'd like you to do is, again, I'm going to invite the same questions that we looked at in day one. We're going to look at these habits of ours from the same perspective. So I will write these questions down in the comments, but for now I'm just going to say them out loud. So the question number one is, when you're looking at what you've written down, and take one thing at a time, okay? For each of these questions, you're going to pose these questions to each thing, each action or response. One, is this true? Is it really true? Am I really too busy? Am I really too busy? Is it true? Two, do I want it to be true? Do I want it to be true? Do I want it to be real? Do I want to be too busy? Three, who would I be and what would my life look like if that was different? So who would I be? What would my life look like if that was different? Another way to look at this is, number three, could it be, say it's an action where you always say yes to something, is this what I really want? Or is there something else going on here? The other question you can pose yourself is this what I really want? Or do I want something different? Checking deeper into yourself. Is this truly what I want for myself in my life? So I can say those things again, and then I will write them down in the comments. Again, the first question is this true? Is this really true? Is it real? The second is, do I want it to be true? Do I want it to be real? Third thing is, who would I be and how would my life be different? What would my life look like if it was different? If I reacted differently? What would that look like to react differently? What would it look like to not procrastinate? What would it look like to wake up enjoying my day, really stoked about starting the day? What would it feel like? Who would I be? How would I show up in my life? That's question number three. Those are just different ways I'm phrasing it, because there might be one that sticks better for you, okay? The other questions were basically the same thing for number three, is this what I really want? And how could it be different? So again, just different questions for the same kind of sentiment I'm trying to get at. I'm just asking you to pick which one resonates, or which one or two really resonates with you. So again, I'm just going to type this out really quickly here. So question one is this really true? Question two is, do I want this to be true? And three is, who would I be? How would I show up in my life if it were different? And I'll just write a couple of the alternatives here. Is, what do I really want? And what else was there? And how could it be different? How would it be different? So pick what resonates with you. Don't worry about answering. Do answer the first two, but for number three, pick what phrase or what question resonates with you. They're kind of the same theme. They're the same way of asking, or different ways, sorry, of asking the same thing. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Again, if you want to look at the first two of the series, the replays are in the event, Faces of Fear. If you guys have questions, please leave them in the comments. Also, please leave your experience. So if you have whatever you experienced from these different practices, please share that, because you're probably not the only one. So whatever comes up for you, share it. If you feel comfortable with sharing that, share it here in the comments so other people can understand what's going on. I understand that it can be a little bit scary sometimes to share something publicly. So if it's something that you want to share and just be witness to, you can just send me a private message. However, I encourage you to share maybe even a piece or a nugget that you feel comfortable sharing in public. So you might not want to share like something really deep that came up, but you could even just share something like, you know, wow, that was actually a really powerful experience. I recommend other people check it out. So that's like, you know, recommending, encouraging other people to try it out, because if it was really powerful for you, it's probably going to be powerful for a lot of other people, and it helps encourage other people to keep growing, right? Keep expanding. And it helps to, you know, share the love. So again, if there's something that struck you, send a comment. Again, I'm going to talk about my terrible internet connection. If there's a part that's cutting out, let me know. Even let me know in the replay. Sometimes it comes out fine in the live, and then the replay is a little garbled. So give me some feedback, please. And the last thing I'm just going to invite again is, if this is something that you're working on, you don't have to work on it alone, okay? I give you little nuggets, but there is a lot of stuff in between. That is what I do in my programs. In my one-on-one work is we bridge how to get from point A to point B. We actually get down to what's holding you back specifically, because we have different points where we reach our walls. We have different ways that we go through the wall. And so while it is important to do these kinds of practices, there are so many other tools that I teach that really gets down to not just the nitty gritty, but really kind of gets more efficient and effective, right? I look at it like, you know, I could, for example, figure out how to build a website, but it would take me a really long time. When I work with someone who knows what they're doing, something that they can do in a day would take me a couple years. So if you are tired of butting up against the same wall over and over and over again, this is my work, is to help you get through the most easily and efficiently and effectively as possible. So you don't have to keep regurgitating and redigesting and refiguring things out. I've been through that stuff already, and I've guided people through that stuff. So it's possible. And the other thing, well, if you don't know from watching this, I will definitely call you on your stuff. So if that's not something you want, well, don't message me. But if that's something that you need, then let's talk, because that is one of the ways that helps us jump through the places that are really challenging the most quickly and effectively. And not just someone pointing out, oh, here's where you're going wrong. It's not about that at all. It's about pointing out, hey, this is what you've been avoiding, and guess what? Here are your next steps to get through it. And not only that, I know that you're going to get through it. I've been there. You've got this. Grab my hand. Let's do this. It's totally different than trying to throw yourself into the fire always and hoping you don't get burnt. So anyway, I'm going to leave you guys with that. Links in the description for replays, for connecting with me, or just send me a private message. And I hope you guys enjoyed this wonderful last 3 days of diving into our inner work. I'm thinking of doing more of these in the future. So again, let me know. Give me some feedback. If you have questions or a topic that you want me to talk more about, put it in the comments, and I probably will cover it. Let's be honest. When people send me questions, I usually address them. So send it on, bring it on. And for now, happy Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We will see each other soon. Oh, a couple last little announcements is check the Move to Within from Within page. I'm probably going to do a little bit of a challenge sometime in December into the new year. We're going to be kind of refiguring and relooking at how to build healthy habits and how to actually build a practice that's sustainable and that works. And the timing is for a reason. The timing is just before Christmas and the holidays and through the holidays for a reason, okay? It's because when we get most overwhelmed, that's when we need it the most. So I'm gonna talk about that stuff in the near future. Keep your head up for that. And I'm sending you guys lots of love. We'll chat soon. Ta-ta for now.